On February 28, 2026, the first day of the U.S. Israeli strikes on Iran, two things happened almost simultaneously. Iran killed the internet. A nationwide blackout. No social media, no encrypted messaging, no signal of any kind reaching the outside world. The digital nervous system of a country of 88 million people severed in hours. And something else appeared. Not online, not on any app, not on any platform that could be switched off. A man's voice, calm and mechanical, reading random number sequences on a shortwave radio frequency. In Persian, 372-059-148. Then the Persian word for attention, spoken 3 times. Then the numbers again. No station identification. No explanation. No context. Just numbers, floating through the ether, arriving at no known destination, into a country where the internet no longer existed. Radio enthusiasts across Europe picked it up within hours. They gave it a designation. V32, the first new number station to appear anywhere in the world in 16 years. And it arrived on day 1 of a war. That's when things got strange. 5 days in, someone tried to kill the signal. A wall of electronic noise flooded the frequency. A pulsing, bubbling static that drowned out the numbers until they were nearly impossible to hear. The technique is called a bubble jammer. It's not new. During the Cold War, the Soviet bloc used bubble jammers to silence the BBC, Deutsche Welle, and Radio Free Europe itself. Today, Iran uses the exact same technology to jam Persian-language broadcasts from the BBC and Radio Farda. Same tool, same frequencies, same government. But here's where the story pivots. The broadcast didn't die. It moved. V32 shifted to a different frequency and continued transmitting. It has been broadcasting more or less daily for weeks. Someone is running this station. Someone is committed enough to keep it alive under active jamming. And someone else is equally committed to silencing it. This is not a relic. This is a live operation. So who's behind V32? The broadcast is in Persian. The natural assumption is Iran. But that assumption collapses on contact with evidence. Iran is the one jamming the signal. Tehran wouldn't jam its own broadcast. The jamming proves that whoever is transmitting is someone Iran wants silenced. That means this is an outside intelligence operation. Broadcasting in Persian. Targeting the Iranian theater. During a live conflict where the target country has no internet. Then it gets darker. ABC News reported that the U.S. government sent an alert to law enforcement agencies about an intercepted encrypted transmission. The alert stated that such transmissions could be intended to activate or provide instructions to prepositioned sleeper assets operating outside the originating country. Sleeper assets. Agents embedded in foreign territory, dormant, waiting for a signal to act. The kind of signal that arrives as numbers on a shortwave frequency. The kind of signal that appeared on day 1 of a war. The CIA did not respond to requests for comment. But there's more. The amateur radio monitoring community didn't just hear V32, they tracked it. Using multilateration and signal triangulation, they pinpointed the transmission to a specific location. A shortwave antenna facility inside a restricted area of U.S. military property near Böblingen, Germany. 15 kilometers southwest of Stuttgart. The forest between Panzer Kaserne and Patch Barracks. The 52nd Strategic Signal Battalion is headquartered at Patch Barracks. That battalion handles strategic communications for U.S. European Command. And V32 is apparently broadcasting from their backyard. Nobody at the Pentagon will confirm this. Nobody at the State Department will discuss it. But the signal doesn't lie. The signal has coordinates. Then came the artifacts. In the first days of transmission, listeners noticed something odd. A faint dual-tone beep in the background of the broadcast. 2 pitches. 620 Hz and 925 Hz, repeating every few seconds beneath the numbers. Ham radio operators identified it immediately. That sound is a default warning tone produced by L3 Harris military radio transmitters, specifically the Falcon 3 series, the ANPRC-160, American-made ITAR-restricted military hardware. The tone is designed to alert operators that the channel is unencrypted, and nobody had bothered to turn it off. The U.S. government restricts the sale and export of these radios to adversaries, but they're apparently using one to broadcast spy numbers into Iran, and they left the warning beep on. like forgetting to take the price tag off a gift. Then it got worse. On March 7th, during the 1800 UTC transmission, something unexpected leaked onto the air. Windows 10 system notification sounds. The little chimes your computer makes when something pops up. They played during a live intelligence broadcast. Then the transmission interrupted. 2 days later, on March 9th, it happened again. More Windows sounds. More interruption. Someone at a U.S. military installation in Germany is running a numbers station off a Windows laptop and they forgot to mute their notifications. The same technology that can't be cracked by any intelligence agency on Earth was almost derailed by a software update chime. And there's more. Audio glitches appeared in the early broadcasts. Stutters. Skips. The kind of lag you get when a computer is struggling to play audio smoothly. Ambient sounds, barely audible, bleeding into the transmission. This is not the polished operation of a superpower. This is something assembled fast, rushed into service, deployed on day one of a war before the wrinkles were ironed out. Then came the words. Among the Persian numbers, listeners picked out English words, plain English. Specifically. Spoken calmly, mid-sequence, as if they belonged there. They didn't. A Persian language broadcast has no grammatical reason to contain English. Unless the operator is an English speaker who needs memory aids. Unless the person reading the numbers doesn't speak Persian fluently enough to distinguish groups without occasional English markers. Unless the person running this operation is not Iranian. This is where we get to the real story. 32 didn't just appear. It evolved. In its first 2 days, it used a human voice. A real person, likely pre-recorded, reading numbers in standard 5-digit groups. Single message per transmission. 20 minutes. Clean. Then on March 2nd, the voice changed. The new voice read numbers with wildly varying inflections. Sometimes grouped properly in fives. Sometimes read digit by digit. Sometimes in loose clusters that sounded made up on the spot. Monitors couldn't tell if this was a different human operator or AI text-to-speech. The format was inconsistent. Sloppy. By March 4th, the Iranian jammer appeared. The station went dark. It reappeared on March 6th on a new frequency. Then on March 18th it changed again. A third iteration. This time classic automated voice sample playback. The kind numbers stations have used for decades. Proper 5-digit groups. 6 messages per transmission, each exactly 20 minutes, for a total broadcast time of 2 hours. Professional. Consistent. Whatever chaos marked the early days, someone has now standardized the operation. That format matters. 6 messages, always 6. Always 20 minutes each. Even if the actual numeric content runs shorter, the remaining time is padded with silence. This is tradecraft. By keeping the message length and count fixed, the operator hides how much real traffic is moving. If one day there's 1 real message and 5 dummies, and the next day there are 6 real ones, an adversary monitoring the station can't tell the difference. The volume of transmissions tells you nothing about the volume of intelligence. The signal is designed to conceal its own purpose. Numbers stations have been the invisible backbone of intelligence operations for over a century. The first was documented in World War I, reported by an Austrian magazine called Kurzwellen Panorama, a station broadcasting Morse code. No one could read it. The technique expanded through World War II and exploded during the Cold War. The Polish Ministry of Interior, one of the few governments to ever acknowledge these stations, disclosed that West Germany was broadcasting numbers stations on 2 frequencies in the 1950s. But most governments have never admitted a thing. The most famous example is E03, known as the Lincolnshire Poacher, named after the English folk tune that played before each transmission. It broadcast from Cyprus, likely operated by British intelligence for over 2 decades. A cheerful melody, followed by a woman's voice reading strings of numbers, hundreds of thousands of digits, transmitted into the void, carrying orders that only one person on Earth could decode. People who found these signals on their shortwave radios described them as haunting. Innocent music, then mechanical recitation, then silence. The closest thing to real espionage most civilians will ever encounter. The encryption is called a one-time pad. It was first described in 1882 by Frank Miller, then reinvented for teleprinters by AT&T engineer Gilbert Vernon. The principle is simple. Every message is encrypted with a key that is completely random, used exactly once, and then destroyed. In 1949, Claude Shannon proved mathematically that a properly used one-time pad cannot be broken. Not by a quantum computer, not by every intelligence agency working together, not ever. The agent writes the numbers down with a pen, applies the key from their paper pad. The instruction reveals itself. Then the agent burns both the message and the key. No digital trace, no metadata, no server log, no forensic artifact of any kind. The message existed. Now it doesn't. We know number stations work because we've caught people using them. In 2010, the FBI arrested 10 Russian sleeper agents living in the United States. Operation Ghost Stories. They had been embedded in American society for years. Some had children. Some had neighbors who thought they were ordinary couples. They communicated with Moscow through coded radio transmissions. Shortwave numbers broadcasts from Cuba. The court filings described radiograms, coded bursts of data received on shortwave radios. The spies would tune in at assigned times, write down the numbers, decode them with one-time pads and carry out their instructions. Anna Chapman became the public face of the case. The FBI had been watching them for years, but the only reason they could prove espionage was that they caught the agents with the physical keybooks in hand. Without those pads, the radio transmissions were just noise, unbreakable, even with the full resources of the United States government. Ana Montes, a senior analyst at the Defense Intelligence Agency, was convicted of espionage for Cuba in 2001. She communicated with her handlers through Cuban number stations. The FBI identified her in part by matching number station traffic to known Cuban intelligence schedules. But again, without the physical key, they could never read a single message. This is why number stations survive in the age of quantum computing and end-to-end encryption. Because the one technique that actually works against a surveillance state isn't digital, it's analog. Paper, fire, radio waves that can't be traced back to a recipient. An agent with a shortwave radio and a pad of numbers that doesn't exist after it's used. The digital world is monitored, tracked, and controlled. Number stations aren't. They work when everything else fails. And on February 28th, everything else failed. Iran shut down the internet. No WhatsApp, no Signal, no Telegram. No way for anyone inside the country to receive a digital message from anyone outside it. That is the exact scenario for which number stations were designed. That is the exact scenario for which the CIA reportedly still trains agents in one-time pads and shortwave reception. A prepositioned fallback. A last resort that was always planned for. Is that plan activated? A signal appeared on day one of a war from a U.S. military base in Germany. It broadcast in the language of the target country on a cheap, untraceable frequency. It was jammed by that country's government within days. It moved and kept transmitting. It leaked evidence of its own origin. American military hardware, American operating systems, English words in a Persian broadcast. And then it cleaned itself up, standardized its format, extended its broadcast time, concealed its traffic volume, went professional. The chaos of the early days gave way to something that looks like it could run for months. After March 25th, V-32's main transmission stopped. But it hasn't gone silent. Listeners have detected faint signals on its frequencies. Very low power, barely readable. The L3 Harris warning tones have returned. Someone is still at the controls, broadcasting at minimal strength. The operation hasn't ended. It's gone deeper underground. The numbers are still being read. The keys are still unbreakable. The agents, if they exist, are still listening. And the only evidence that any of this is happening is a voice, calm and mechanical, reading numbers into thin air, from a forest in Germany, into a country with no internet, where the only way to receive a message is to turn on a radio and write it down with a pen. Almost like the signal was never lost. What do you think V-32 is really communicating? Let me know in the comments.